David ben Yitzchak and Rachel but Leo. Ashley's Ashley's from Toronto.
We don't have to clap. We don't need to clap.
And she's from a time when Toronto was white Christian. I mean, it's like just 2 years ago. Okay. So we have a lot in Parshat Beha'alotcha, and I could have done what I did last week with Parshat Beha'alotcha, because we really do have the transition of Vayehi bin Aaron, the traveling of the Aron, and then all the things that go wrong. But we also have Miriam speaking Lashon Hara about Moshe, and we have Eldad and Medad, which really triggered that Lashon Hara. I want to speak about something that I've been speaking about this afternoon as well in eternity, and that's it by Rav Sachs, which then moved me on to a few other ideas, and a Rav Hirsch, which I think is exceptional, which really is very, very thinly connected to the things before, but it so much, I read it on Shabbat, and it so much resonated with me. Again, I want to give a big thanks and a welcome. I cannot tell you how happy it made me when you came to visit last week, those of you who came to visit. Even those of you whose chesed it wasn't came to visit, a few of you whose chesed it wasn't, and my dad's helper, you know, people look at me and then they don't understand why are these young ladies coming to see you. I say, well, yeah. The people just kept coming last week, and it was, it really is like the name of Sim Sameach. It's very heartwarming. There is coffee there, but it's just not, it's not very grotty. And it's just so nice to see some different faces when you're dealing with what you're dealing with. Hello, welcome. Hello, welcome, grandparents. No, we waited for you. From here or from there? Good. Okay, so we have this from, again, relating it to what we spoke about last week. If you remember last week, we spoke about the fact that the reality is different and how to deal with reality. We spoke about the Nazir, and or was it Bamidbar we spoke about reality, not last week. Last week we spoke about the Nazir. How does the leader deal with this reality? Meaning, you have expectations, and you're also leaders, but let's say at the moment you're not leaders and you have expectations. What about the people who lead you? What are their expectations? Parents, teachers, and what happens when their expectations do not materialize? And how are they meant to deal with that when they do not materialize? Everyone has expectations. How do you deal with the disappointment? How do you move forward? And this is so relevant because Moshe Rabbeinu has been, if the introduction I gave you was 2 weeks ago in Bamidbar, when we're speaking about the preparation that Moshe Rabbeinu has gone through everything with Am Yisrael. And they're special, you got sheets, okay. Everything he's gone through with Am Yisrael, right through since Yetziat Mitzrayim, to Matan Torah, to Chet HaEgel, to all of Sefer Vayikra, the Mishkan, everything. He's gone through absolutely everything. And now things start going terribly wrong, and they're going to get worse. And how is a leader meant to deal with that disappointment? Meaning, we've spoken many times about how I deal with my personal disappointment. How do you deal with your disappointment in others? How do you keep going? Because realistically speaking, expectations are never completely met. They're never fully met. You don't always, because we are, even those of us who pretend to be pessimistic, we are fundamentally optimistic, and the pessimism is there to lighten up possible disappointment if the expectation doesn't occur. Rabbi Sachs here relates, I've edited it a bit, and I wanted to add a few things on. He relates to this because he was a leader, and he was the leader of the Anglo-Jewish community for many, many years, represented them incredibly in front of he was like a foreign minister for the Jewish people. If you ask, the uniqueness of Rav Sachs in his role of leadership is the way he represented himself to the Jewish people to the Goyim. He was eulogized by now as the King of England. He was eulogized. That doesn't happen often, that the chief rabbi is eulogized by. He was then Prince Charles, now King Charles, and he was a lord in the House of Lords, probably still is. Well, it's not alive, but still, I don't think you lose that name. And was writing frequently in the Times, the big newspapers in England, a voice of the Jewish people. And with that leadership comes disappointment. One always, when your leaders have fallen, have died, you always wonder how they would be dealing with current situations. I wonder so many times how Rav Amital would have dealt with Corona, how Rav Amital would have dealt with October the 7th. One can only speculate. So see what he says here. And I want you to make it relevant for yourself, because you might be thinking, I'm never going to lead a community, but you're going to lead a family, and you're going to lead friends, and you're going to lead in camp, and so it's relevant for everyone, okay? So, it's never easy to lead a group of people. And to lead a Jewish group of people, is even harder. And to spiritually lead people is even harder. Why would it be harder? Because when you're physically leading people, there is a need of the people, and they need you. They need you to supply their needs, and therefore they are, to a degree, reciprocal to what you ask for. But when it's spiritual, who needs it? Who needs a rabbi? Who needs Torah in their regular life? It's not a necessary given. I think that's always true, but he says very often leaders will show themselves to be very relaxed and easygoing, optimist ba'aliza, they will be happy and optimistic, but very often behind that mask is a ship in a storm at sea. When we absorb this, when we know sure for sure, we see how complex the issues are, and how thin the ice is that we're standing on. And it can just break away very, very quickly. I remember in that time, it was about 10 years ago, when Ezra Schwartz from Boston was killed, and he was dating a girl in our school, and my next door neighbor was killed in the same terrorist attack, and I lost all kind of patience that I should have had with the regular tedious things that were coming up in the school. I just didn't have it, and I certainly wasn't relaxed at that time. I've been relaxed indoors, but at that time I wasn't relaxed. There was just too much going on in my street and in my life for me to be able to hide that relaxation. And you're walking on thin ice. Sometimes it just explodes. There's just too much pressure, and someone makes a stupid comment, and it just gets you the wrong way, and you can't keep the face. And something breaks. כשהוא יודע איפה הוא ויודע איפה הוא רוצה להיות, אבל אינו רואה שום דרך המובילה מכאן לשם. You know where you are now, you know where you want to get. I so much wanted to be here on Shavuot night. I cannot tell you how much, and I had planned everything to be here, but ultimately I decided to be with my father, and it didn't make any sense. I would leave my father for 12 hours to come here and then sleep it out, and so it just didn't make sense. That wasn't why I came to Yerushalayim in the end. But I know that buzz on Shavuot night. So many times I've been in the Midrash on Shavuot night, and you have an expectation that happens, and I heard that it was like that. Yeah, and then that feeling of everyone coming to the concert in the morning, it's just almost built for the end of a northern hemisphere year, right? That everyone's in the Beit Midrash, or they're in Shiur, and the place is just buzzing. And Effie is making sure that everyone is also growing in other ways. But if it doesn't happen the way you want to happen, you despair. It leads you to despair. So Rabbi Sachs is honest, says every time I felt this way, Shavti v'nizkarti b'regat soreb l'parshatenu. I refer to this week's parsha. By the way, if this goes out to Chul, it's not this week's parsha. They're now a week behind because they had 2 days Yom Tov, so they didn't read parsha. They read second day Yom Tov, so they're still in Nassau. Rega shemoshe higia bo el hadyuta tachtona b'maniguto. It's almost it's not actually the lowest place he will get to in his leadership, but it's a terrible experience for him, probably because of his expectation. And it seems to have been a very minor incident that broke the camel's back. The people were immersed in their favorite hobby, complaining about food. With ridiculous, fraudulent nostalgia when they're talking about the beautiful fish they had in Egypt, when of course they never had beautiful fish in Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt, and they weren't having like Denise and grilled salmon. They weren't having beautiful fish in Egypt. How beautiful the food was. Kishuim were probably cucumbers. It's the same family that we call kishuim today, not cucumbers, but it's the same family. But hakishuim va'abatichim, watermelons, habatzal va'ashum, I don't know, onions and garlic. They've forgotten about all the bad things. They forgot about the slavery, about the oppression. Suddenly, everything they remember is fantastic. It was so great in Egypt. All they're interested in now is in the menu that they had every day in Egypt. God reacts in the most negative way. But Moshe doesn't get angry, he collapses with despair. We went through all of what we've gone through for this. Lama hareota la'avadech, he turns to God, and why you put me through this? He turns to God. Lama hareota la'avadech, lama lo masati temenecha lasum et masat kol hamazalai. Why did you give me this job? It's just an impossible job. Why? Why did you give me this job? Hanochi hereti et kol hamazeh, they're not my children. I didn't conceive these children, they're not my children. Imanochi ladati. You're telling me I have to shred them, I have to deal with their complaints, I have to deal with their problems. Everything's wrong, everything's bad. We brought out fish, they want meat. We brought out meat, they want fish. Whatever we bring them, they want the opposite. It's too cold, it's too hot. Too many shiurim, not enough shiurim, too long shiurim, too short shiurim. Well, everything, whatever can possibly be wrong, they will say. How will I find meat for my people? Next paragraph. For me, Rabbi Sachs says, it's a red line. When I see this, it's a red line. You know, there's a difference, of course, right? Because Moshe never wanted the job. Anyone in a position like Rabbi Sachs, or any teacher, has applied for the job, taken the job, trained for the job. Moshe Rabbeinu never asked for the job, so Moshe Rabbeinu's claim is even more formidable. I didn't ask to do this. You forced me to do this. I didn't want to do the job, and I can't do this. I can't deal with this. But for him, he uses it as an example. Almost measuring the level of despair when things aren't what they should be. When things aren't exactly the way they should be. When you're still dealing with things you're dealing in the first week, in the last 2 weeks. And they're not where they should be, or you see utter selfishness where there should be selflessness, and you're just disappointed. Every time I felt I couldn't carry on, says Rabbi Sachs, I used to read this and think to myself, as long as I didn't reach the level of Moshe, I can still carry on. I'm not at his level of despair. Like I said 2 weeks ago, something that authenticates Torah is the realism. And when you see that the Torah isn't being isn't being portrayed as being perfect, and that there are problems. And if Moshe had these problems, it's okay for me to have these problems. Right? If someone as great and capable and with the criteria of leadership that he has reaches this level, if I reach this level, it's okay. אפשר ללמוד ממנה שאם אתה חש כישלון אין פירוש הדבר שנכשלת. If you feel failure, it doesn't mean that you failed. פירוש הדבר רק שעדיין לא הצלחת, it just means you have not yet succeeded. You can feel failure, and the failure doesn't mean that you failed, it just means you're just not where you should be. ועל אחת כמה וכמה תחושת כישלון אין משמעה שאתה כישלון. And 100%, just because the other people have failed, the people under your command have failed, doesn't mean that you failed. להפך, כישלונות באים למי שמסתכל. On the contrary, I've said this to you many times before, the only people who fail are the people who try. People who don't try, they never fail. Because they never try. They never push themselves, so they never fail. והנכונות להסתכל נדרשת מכל מי שרוצה להוביל לעולם טוב יותר. And the danger of failure only presents itself to people who want to make the world a better place. People who dare. People who dare try and change are up for failure. But at least they're trying. People who don't dare, they don't get anything. They don't fail, but they don't achieve anything either. Next paragraph. משה גם לא היה יחיד ששאל את נפשו למות. He's not the only leader who reached this low where he just wants to die. Just, the people are my people and I'm not succeeding. I just don't want to be around them anymore. עוד שלושה נביאים. He gives other examples here. They're not exactly the same. One is Eliyahu, which I think is totally the same. Because Eliyahu reaches this height of bringing the people to Har Carmel. He reaches this height where all the people declare, as we do at the end of Ne'ilah, Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. And within weeks, they're back doing Avodah Zarah. And Eliyahu is finished with Am Yisrael. It's an intriguing parsha there in Perek Yutet in Melachim Aleph, where God tries to teach Eliyahu what education really is. But Eliyahu has given his whole life to bring in the people, brought them to this revelation at Har Carmel, and then experienced a fall of the people going back to the way they were. And the truth of the matter is that Eliyahu, in comparison to Moshe, are two different stories, because Eliyahu ends up either being fired or quitting. Moshe carries on. He sees better times. He doesn't see the people go into Israel, but he brings them to the border. Eliyahu doesn't reach that far. Next one, Hasheni, final paragraph on the page, is Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu was given the task to present prophecies of doom to the Jewish people of what was going to happen because we don't listen and what's going to happen to the Beit Mikdash. He was equaled and competed with by many, many false prophets who were saying what the people wanted to hear. And he ended up in jail. Yirmiyahu was beaten, punished, shut up, and he was telling the truth. What we failed to realize, unless we've learned Yirmiyahu properly, Rav Yonatan sometimes teaches it, sometimes doesn't. But until we've learned Yirmiyahu, we don't understand that he was surrounded by false prophets who presented themselves as authentically as he did. And the people still have free choice. And if you're presented by people who are giving you prophecies of doom, and people are saying it's going to be okay, and they look equally as capable of saying what they're saying, why should you believe the doomsday man? And his disappointment is, I think, even more than any of the predecessors, in that everything he said would happen happened, and he saw it happen. He wrote Eicha. He saw the destruction of the temple. He had warned it was going to happen. It happened. He had been told he was talking nonsense. He was trying to lead the people out of the hole they had made for themselves, and he failed to do so, and then watched the people suffer terribly. And his last example less resonates with me over the page, which is Yonah, because Yonah doesn't really present himself as being a leader. Like, Yonah is running away from the leadership. But we'll see what he says about Yonah. It's like about five lines down. השלישי הוא יונה, ודווקא לאחר ששליחותו לנינווה הושלמה בהצלחה. דווקא when he succeeds in bringing the people of Nineveh back to God, or back to their good ways, השם שלח אותו להודיע לאנשי העיר האשורית הגדולה שעירם תיהפך בעוד 40 יום. הוא עשה כן, he tells them that the place is going to be destroyed in 40 days. He does that. דבריו נפלו על אוזניים קריות. אנשי ניבא הפכו את ליבם אחת. They do teshuvah, Hashem b'telefon, and God gets rid of the gazal din, v'ha'ir v'toshvan nitzlu. But Yonah lo haya mutzeh, but he wasn't happy, Yonah. He wasn't happy with what happened. Libo haya ma'al Hashem, and he was upset with God. Yadati shesema she'ikre b'sof roten, הכתוב אינו מביים יונה כעס על השם שהסיר את אויבי ישראל או שמא סבר שהמחילה אינה מתיישרת עם מידת הדין. It's not clear what his disappointment is, whether his disappointment is that God saved the enemies of the Jewish people, or whether God didn't invoke din as he should have done. As I say, it's a strange example for me that Rabbi Sachs brings here, because Moshe, Eliyahu, and Jeremiah is directly relating to the people and their disappointment with the people and their disappointment in their leadership, as opposed to Yonah, which is a slightly different, but there is, the common denominator is the despair of a leader. Next paragraph, they have profound messages for us. Our belief doesn't necessarily take us to happiness. It doesn't release us from headaches and heartaches. Lama? It's a beautiful sentence. I remember in the old days when I used to do Ongei Shabbat for Bnei Akiva, there's this very short song, Zionist song called Ani Va'ata Neshaneh Ha'olam. It was like my theme song. We will change the world. Judaism wants to change the world. From the days of Avraham Avinu, Judaism wants to change the world. That's possibly why the world doesn't like us. But we want to change the world. We want to remind the world that we can do better. And this is one of the most exceptional, unique elements in the history of mankind. Rov Hadatot, Rabbi Sachs says, most religions in Yanam Kabbalat Ha'olam, they accept the world for what it is. And Judaism is about rejecting the way of the world and trying to make it change. The world should be what it's meant to be. As we spoke a few weeks ago, God's faith in man, that man will change the world, he'll rectify the world. Liot Yehudi Perusho Lenasot Litzvoach Otam. And to be a Jew means to try and imprint your seal. To try and make a difference, imprint your seal. You notice that all the time they're trying to make us like them. So when we fight and defend ourselves after October the 7th, they want to make us like Nazis. See, you're just like them. And we're not. Because we don't create gas chambers. And we don't dismantle human bodies. We defend our people and we defend women and children. But we don't create gas chambers. We've never created an Auschwitz. In the history of the Jewish people, there will never be something like that. Never. But they want to put us into that position so that they can say you're just like us. Don't come on your high horses that you're changing the world, you're different, you have different values, you're just like us. And we're not. We don't rape women and children. We don't blow up buses with little babies in them. We don't put bombs in prams and take them to soldiers and have them explode. We don't do that. We've never done that. But they want to say we do because they don't want us to be who we are. They want us to be like them. We're trying to change the world. When those of you go in the army, I hope you don't learn how to do this, but the general procedure in the army, when you're going into a room, is to smack the door, throw the grenade in, move across and fire inside. We don't do that in houses where there are people. We don't do that. We open the door. We don't throw grenades in. We lose so many soldiers because we don't do that. We don't throw grenades into populated houses where they're hiding behind women and children. The soldiers expose themselves. And so many of them get injured or killed because of that. No Marine has ever done that. No British SAS has ever done that. It's not the way soldiers are meant to fight. It's the way the Israeli army does fight. And they'll never admit it. Every so often you'll have a commander of an army, either in England or America, who will say it. He'll say it beferish. And some paranoid Jew will then send it on all their WhatsApp so that everyone can see that there's a guy somewhere in the world who knows what we do. And we don't behave like them. And we don't act like them. When we lose soldiers, we go all over the world to get them back. When we lose, we're all the way to Entebbe to bring people out of Entebbe. These people who tried to change, people like Moshe, David, Eliyahu, Yirmiyahu, people are trying to change the world. And when you try to change, it will be disappointment. Not everyone will change, not everyone will listen, and there will be disappointment. Moshe's liberation of the Jewish people is to create something that isn't Egypt. We didn't come out of Egypt to create Egypt too. We came out of Egypt to create a different culture, lo ke'eretz Mitzrayim. Not idolatry and not corruption. A different place. Whether we succeed or not is a different question, but that was why we left. I've said so many times to you during the year, Exodus is about the liberation of an idea, not the liberation of a people whose flag is the idea. People that will liberate instead of oppose. People who will we won't enslave, we will honor. When you try and change, a girl once said to me in the Masibat Siyum, an English girl, actually, she said it in a very English way. Actually, she was like sitting in a circle on a Friday night. She said, I just want to say, maybe, perhaps, that perhaps, maybe, sometimes, perhaps, in the Midrashah, maybe you brainwash about Aliyah. Moi? And my answer was twofold. Maybe, perhaps, yes. Maybe. But if you think that someone's going to make Aliyah because I told them to, because I waved a flag or someone's going to leave their family, leave their culture because I sang Alpine Shana and made the actions, you really think someone's going to do all of that because of a couple of Shiur Klalis? You lost your mind. You think someone's going to change their way of life because I screamed and shouted about something in a Shiur Klali? You lost their mind. You think a girl's going to stop seeing a boy because I gave a Shiur Strive for Truth, or because Rabbi Yoni sang a nigel, or because Rabbi punctuated boys, colon girls, or because Rabbi Vida said, what is a boy? And does he exist, or is it just an optical illusion? Because Rabbi Yoni told me, it's not, you know, and I know that it's nonsense. And whenever a girl, and I think Ashley is a great testimony of that, I'm sure her grandparents would be very proud as well. A girl comes to me and says, thank you, everything I have is because of the Midrash. I said, it's just such nonsense. It's just nonsense. I would love it to be because of the Midrash. So when I get to heaven, I have a few points. But it's not. It's just nonsense. Everything you have achieved, you have achieved. And everywhere that you have failed, you have failed. My honor, privilege, is to accompany you. That's an incredible privilege. And to play a part. I can't change people. And honestly, I really don't want to. Because I don't think change invoked by someone else is temporary. It will disappear. Change has to be self-change. Otherwise it will just disappear. The person goes and the change goes. So you have your expectations and you have your disappointment. So I read this and I thought, okay, he never finishes on a pessimistic note, but I thought, well, how do I answer it? Let's say you're in the situation. And there can be situations like this. I've experienced many over the years. I remember one year, it was a long, long time ago, And the Madrichot put so much into the year, invest so much, they did a special pu'ulah for the girls at the end of the year, and no one turned up. And it was such a slap in the face. It was such a slap in the face, and I didn't even know. There's many, probably about 20 years ago, I didn't even know how to console them. Now, how does someone then have the strength to do it again with other people, where there's such a horrible reaction? I'm talking about no one, efforts, no one came. It was like a Monday night thing right at the end of the year, and no one came at all. And who cares if you're going to enjoy it or not? Just give something back. They spent hours with you in Terem, hours. And came with you with food, and they accompanied you through everything, and who cares whether you're going to enjoy it or not? It's just reciprocation, and I didn't even know how to comfort them. So I thought to myself, when I read this piece, and I thought to myself, so where do I get the strength from? And there are two specific things I want to share with you. One is a beautiful comment by the Piaseczna Rebbe. It's such a beautiful comment, which I've learned with some of you over the last few weeks. And it's so obvious when he says it, and it's so inspiring afterwards, that it can give you the card if you have moments of despair. Ha'im lo nischak anu ala shoter? Would we not laugh at the fool sheshama et tehilat ha'etrog, who heard that an etrog is a very, very tasty fruit, v'chataf le'echol zera garin or boser mimenu, and he snatched an unripe etrog off a tree and bit into it. V'yitzak v'olal alav leimor, and he will olel alav, he will say, this is horrible, you said this was a beautiful. I mean, I don't know whether etrog's a great example. It's so tasty, actually. But let's say an orange, okay? An unripe orange or an unripe, well, we talk about sweetness, okay? So an unripe orange, and you bit into the orange, and it's not sweet, it's sour, it's not ready. And a person bites into this unripe orange. It's even green, like idiot. Like, it's called orange because you eat it when it's orange. So why did you take a green one off the tree? But he took a green one off the tree. It's obviously a he. He took a green one off the tree, and it's not tasty. And then he says, "Pre-merva arsihu ha'etrog." You told me this is a sweet fruit, and it's not. It's a sour fruit. We'll just burst into laughter, and we'll say to him, Hamtain, wait! Just wait! Just wait, and you will see how sweet it is. These are such important words for me, because it's the key, I think, to education, to leadership, is patience. It was the biggest mistake I made in my very first years, when I expected every girl to be steiging on the second night Seder, and couldn't fathom why they weren't. Or the mistake that a young pair of mates, when their 3-year-old throws their sitzer onto the floor, and you're shouting at your 3-year-old, this is what the Nazis did. And it's just a 3-year-old. He doesn't know what a Nazi is. He's jumping up and down the sitzer because he gets a reaction. And you're talking about ideology. Oh, you don't believe that God is in the 4 corners of the earth? What are you doing? Anti-Semites. It's a 3-year-old. And you'll go with your yeshiva stuff with him. You're throwing Yiddish words in. Just wait. Just wait. Pick them off the floor, and put them in the cupboard, and try again next week. You laugh, I'm telling you, this is a mistake. Not him in the cupboard, the sister in the cupboard. It's a mistake people make. The kid doesn't do Nagelbus in the morning. What are you? You're a guy. You're a guy. You don't do Nagelbus. What you are? You believe in Jesus. The kid didn't wash his hands 3 times. What's he going to do? He's not even Chayav on a shin. He's 3 years old. He doesn't get up for sure. He's 9. He doesn't get up for sure. You don't want to pray to God. You know, I can't stand. I don't stand. God gives you food. I can only impersonate this because I did it. Patience. Just wait. You just need patience. You just have to wait. Because at the moment, the fruit is not ripe. But if you garden the garden well, the fruit will become ripe. It will become ripe. Do you know what you can do with a bad midah? How you can turn it around? I've told a story in a different context, but I have to tell you this because it comes up at least once a year. I was a madrich of a shevet. The shevet was called Beha'alotcha. It would be, fate would have it, that Beha'alotcha was the brother of the Piatzeza, who lived in Israel. It was called Admor Beha'alotcha. And this shevet were murdered. They were like potential terrorists. They used to smuggle fireworks into camp in aerosol cans, like deodorants. They would put the fireworks inside, smuggle them in, and then open them up and start throwing fireworks at each other at night. No one wanted to be their madrich. And I really wanted to be their madrich because they reminded me of myself. And I remember the totally true story with no exaggeration from beginning to end. And without naming names, we're sitting in a madrichim's meeting about 2 o'clock in the morning in a Bnei Akiva camp, and we have the left wing and the right wing. The left wing are the women, and the shamas, we should save them. The right wing are the boys. Hang them from the trees, right? Hang them upside down from the trees, burn them at the stake. They're rubbish of society. And this argument is going backwards and forwards, and there's a knock at the door, and a young lad asks for dive. I'm dive. Dave is dive, and he asked for dive, and we were in one of these old English schools, you know, that you winter month and then you get kicked out after every 2 years. And he says, listen, something's happened in the bedroom. So I said, what happened? He said, the radiator fell off the wall. I want to explain the radiators are this thick, and they're from here to the end. These are Victorian radiators. They were put there by Queen Victoria herself. It fell off the wall. I said, well, how did it fall off the wall? He said, don't know. Just happened. So I went upstairs to see the reasons why we were about to be kicked out of another lovely Harry Potter type school in south of England. And when I got to the room, I saw that the radiator had been pulled off the wall. And I looked at it and I thought, well, how do I explain this, like, to the proprietor, you know? I mean, Victoria put it up there. Well, she's dead. Who's putting it back? While I'm standing there, a boy comes up to me. This boy is famous today. And he comes with a sleeping bag. A sleeping bag, which is full of shaving foam. Do you know how many bottles of shaving foam it takes to fill a sleeping bag? I have no idea. I would guess 50. It was full. It was like you could get into it and drown in it. It was full of shaving foam. And he said, Dave, how am I meant to sleep in this tonight? How am I meant to sleep in this tonight? I don't know. And so I closed the door to the room and I said, okay, I want to know who filled his sleeping bag with shaving foam. I'm not leaving till I know. After about 5 minutes, a boy comes up to me and he says to me, it was me. He's a headmaster. He said, today. He said, it was me. So I said, can you explain why? And he said, well, last night he threw a firework at my head. So I went back to the first guy and I said to him, I put my arm around him, you're allowed to do that. I put my arm around him and I said, I just want to give you a bit of advice for life. If you try and kill people, you might discover a sleeping bag full of shaving foam the next day. So have a good night. And don't forget, Kriyat Shema. Bye. These are the most incredible. I love these people. And 2 of them were Eidim at my wedding. They were Eidim Yichud at my wedding. And I love them. To this day, I love them. I see them and one of them was Sam's uncle. He died very young, but he was Sam's uncle. Every time I see them, I was only in the country for 4 or 5 years. What I learned from them was that if you don't throw these people out to the gutter, and you channel that energy, they become great people. And every one of them is a great person. Much greater than me. I'm not great, but they really achieved, because I can't take credit, but I was one of the people who had patience, who could see and I've never learned that Peter says that, and it only happened then, who could see a fruit that wasn't ripe, and understood that this will be a ripe fruit if I can wait. That was the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about this essay, this despair that Rabbi Sands is referring to. How do you counter that despair? By knowing that, just wait. I'll tell you just one other story like that. There was a girl in the Midrash. Again, I never give examples from near years in case people know. and she really didn't do anything of substance in the year. And I walked into the room that Don Yochel is using now a few years back, and she's sitting there, and she looks like Sarah Schneider, right? She got that hairstyle like it's a shaitel, and she's got long, and she looked, and I looked twice, and she said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" I said, "No," and then she told me her name, and then I looked at her, "Oh yeah." Oh, yeah. And then obviously what's about to come out, which you can't say because it's awkward and not correct, it's like, what happened? Like, you weren't like that during your year. And she said, "I know what you're thinking." And she did. And she said, it just clicked. At some stage it clicked. She's a Piet Cessna, right? It's just, she wasn't right in the Midrash, but it did click. Something clicked. Yeah, it was years later. Something clicked and things came together. And then she started coming back to Shiur at the Midrash as a Bulgarian. She started coming back. Incredible. But I want to show you another idea. I've just given you one sentence on page 3. Asher kilishalnu mitzvotav et tzivanu, levarech et amo Yisrael ba'ahava. My wife's uncle, Rabbi Aaron Bat, was a very, very big Talmid Chacham. Literally, I don't think I ever had a conversation with him that wasn't Torah. He only spoke Torah. He was a Talmid Muvhak of Rav Soloveitchik, and he was the deputy editor of the Encyclopedia Talmudic, if you've ever come across that. He's a real Talmid Chacham. And he once asked me, why does a Kohen make a bracha, levarech et amo Yisrael ba'ahava? And he answered as follows. For me, it's definitive, and it's an answer again, a counter, perhaps a solution to Rabbi Saxi's question, which I totally feel. The Kohanim are the educators. That's who they are, right? Because you know that a Kohen will only be a Beit Mikdash twice a year for a week at a time. And he doesn't own land because he doesn't have an achala. So what's he doing for the rest of the year? And they're spread out all over the place, the Arei Leviim. So they are the educators. That's who Leviim and Kohanim are. Well, Kohanim and Leviim, right? But they are the educators. You cannot educate without love. It's not possible. I don't think you always feel it. And I think what makes it so hard at the end of both of them is the love that is nurtured for Talmidot and then having to say goodbye and not seeing them. You cannot do this job if you don't love the students. You cannot do it. It's too much hassle. You're so tiresome. I'm not even doing that job anymore. I get half of it, right? Dr. Yochel deals with it on her own most of the time. But frustration, tiresome, I still think that first Shabbat, when you're talking to girls on that first Shabbat, and you're looking at it, and I'm as frightened of you as you are of me, I'm about to do an Alpine Shana, and you're going to look at me like, who the hell is this? Like, where did they let him out from? And I'm going like this, and they're saying, well, that's the Rosh Hashiva. Rosh Hashiva of which institution? And you're starting again, and I'm making these jokes, and you're staring at me. And I'm saying to you, you will laugh. And you're looking back and saying, no, we won't. Like you are. And you're starting again, and it's frightening, and I don't know anyone, I don't have any relationship with anyone, and you can't do the job if you don't love your students, and you can't bring up children if you don't love them. So Kohanim, their bracha is levarech et amo Yisrael, to give them above the ahava. If you won't give it with love, it won't happen. And I think that is the key. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu is able to pick himself up from that despair when the expectation does not meet. Because he loves the people. And he'll say to God, they're not my children, but he really means they are. And when perhaps someone says they're the papa, they really mean they are. Even though it's insulting, right? I've got my dad, I don't want you, I don't want you as the papa, right? But it's a feeling that, you look after people during war, you look after people when they're upset, when they can't get their shavuot when they, for whatever reason, you see girls crying, and you try to calm girls, but however detached you may be, people will always say, the Midrashah's not doing anything, Yakira is helping her. Yakira is working for the Midrashah. And I'll recall a story many, many years ago, one of my favorite stories. We used to have a partnership with another organization right at the beginning when we were in America. And it wasn't going so well, and I was invited to a meeting in New York City, which is already bad news. Middle Manhattan or whatever. And they keep going at the Midrashah. And they keep attacking the Midrashah. And at some stage, Hannah Spiegelman was there, at some stage I slammed my hand on the desk. And I said, you don't speak about me like that. And the guy said, I'm not speaking about you, I'm speaking about Midrashah. And I said, I am. And I walked out, and I'd never been back in that building. I walked out, and I am the Midrashah, and I speak about me like that. And everything comes back, and everything, even when it's harsh, is with love. The frustration, the care. The frustration comes because of the care. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be frustrated. Just walk away. Not my problem. I had my ear. You wouldn't even relate to it. It's not my problem. It's only because you care, and you can't. If you have love, it doesn't matter how long you get. You can keep going, and you can keep going, and you can keep going. And people ask me, 35 years. Well, and someone asked me the other day, Marnie, was it you asked me the other day? What? Every year, I love every year, and here's the best, here's the best. They're all the best, and they're no best. I just love all my students, and it just, the greatest nachas you get is when students come back like this with their kids, and you just become friends, you know. I've got a student who lives 2 doors away from me. 2 doors away from me, and I'm not sure. And she was in Central, she did Shalabed, and we're friends. She loves vegetables or whatever. She sent me like lettuce juice once. So I sent her a bottle of vodka and said, here's potato juice. It's a joke. I've been to her daughter's wedding, and it's incredible. She was here yonks ago, over 20 years ago, and I think that's the ideal. It has to be the ahava. I want to leave you with this Rav Hirsch. And you can connect it because it's about frustration. And I read this on Shabbos. My dad is in Pnimit Gimel, Pnimit Dalet, but right next to the Beit Knesset. So I'm a new member of the Shari Tzedek Haredi community, and I daven there all the time. And before Yom Tov, I photocopied the whole timetable, and they have minyanim with like a shtipas all the time, minyanim. And I had a bit of time. My dad was resting, so I picked up a Rav Hirsch. Something else in this week's Parshat is about the cloud. Right? I spoke about the Tibot Shalom. I've already done that. Right? But the cloud goes up. We travel. The cloud comes down. We stay. Okay. How we're meant to travel in the midnight. So see what he says. For me, this was almost fell into my lap in the predicament that I find myself personally in at the moment, which honestly is just heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. Just watching your father die is just heartbreaking. And and he reads like this: Ha'anan haya shevet haroeh. So the Anan, the cloud, was the staff of the shepherd. He's telling them when they're going to encamp. When they're going to travel. You don't know when you're going to travel. You don't know. It's not like God says, sends an SMS out or WhatsApp, we're going in a week. You have no idea when you're going to travel. You have no idea when the cloud's going to go up. Sometimes you're in camp for a long time. Sometimes for a couple of days. It could be for one night that you would encamp. For one day. Whatever it is. Like the Ramban explains, there was no way of telling what's going to be. Every day a doctor comes in and gives me another story. No way of knowing. They got no idea. He's too sick to have a CT. He's too sick to have an X-ray. They've got no way of knowing. And every day someone else comes in. Professors, doctors, whatever. ולפיכך, כל המין שהענן נתן סימן לחניה, so when the Anan says we're going to encamp, היה עליהם לעשות את כל ההכנות לחניה, so they had to encamp, right? You don't know how long you're going to encamp, so you have to unpack everything, build the camp as if you're going to be there for 2 years. You've got no idea how long you're going to encamp for. Because maybe after a few hours they're going to have to break it up and travel. You've got no idea. You don't know what's going to happen in the next. Why have I got my phone? I don't bring my phone to Shiur Klali. My phone has to be on. I might have to stop and go. I have no idea. כדי ללכת אחר הענן, the ענן can go up, come down. I dismantled the whole camp, I built it all up, everything's up, put the carpet down, and the cloud goes up and roll it up and off we go again. הנה זה תורת המסע במדבר, that's how we traveled in the midbar. שלמדנו ממנו לדורות עולם, and from that we learn forever. היח ללכת אחרי השם, that's how you have to faithfully follow God. למדנו ממנו לקבל את הנהגת השם. Whatever he decides, you just gotta go with it. אפילו איננה מובנת, even if you don't understand. לעתים הוא מורה לנו לעזור את מה שהתחלנו, לאהוב את זה אתה. Sometimes he tells you to leave something you started to enjoy. לעתים הוא מטיל עלינו להחזיק מעמד במצב בלתי רצוי. And sometimes he expects you to be able to uphold yourself in a position that is unenviable. ואף על פי כן נקבל, nonetheless we will accept ונקיים בשמחה את כל מה שהוא מסדר, whatever he tells us. שכן בהיותנו תחת שם הנהגה לחוש באושר תמיד, because once we learn to rely on God, we will be happy. בעצם אמונתו וסיבתו להשם הוא שיעניק לנו אושר, and it's our ability to rely on God and believe in God that even if you don't understand, He knows what He's doing. That will bring us happiness. ותמיד נהיה מוכנים להשליך את ידינו להשם, and we have to let ourselves fall into the hands of God. נלך אחריו למטרות לא ידועות. To follow Him into places that are not understandable. ובדרכים לא מובנות. Ways that are totally incomprehensible. נייחל ונספר לו בסבלנות. Again, the patience. We wait with patience. או נלך אחריו אומץ, and we follow him with courage. הכל על פי הוראת הנהגתו. You can understand how this fell into my lap on Shabbos. אולם אם נעיין, but let me just point out one other thing. מבחנים אלה שהשם חינך להם תמול לדורות עולם, and this is teaching us forever. הרי נראה שלא המאמצים של מסעות ארוכים. If you look carefully in the psukim, the challenge wasn't long journeys. The challenge was staying still. The challenge was not moving. אלא בעיקר המתנה, waiting, הסבלים, the חניה, the pain of being encamped and not knowing. We have letted count, and so that's the real test of the people. You're not moving. You have no direction. You're just encamped, and you're waiting for the cloud to go up. You're waiting for, and you're just stuck where you are. The Parshat doesn't talk at all about how much time we will travel. It only talks about how much time we may stay, a day, a week, a month, but not how much, it's not there, it's not in the psukim. אנחנו מזכיר פעמים אחדות את ההמתנה בשנייה ממושכת. Classic language, it's beautiful. He just talks about how many times we'll be stuck. And how when we're stuck, we need to just hand over to God. Because you're just not in control. And the frustration only comes when you think you are in control. And then you're frustrated because you can't do what you want to do. מיד בפסוק ז' הרי הוא אומר, ואחרי כן ניסו, at some stage you will travel, הם ניסו רק אחרי שנעלה ענן, but only when the cloud goes up. ולא קודם לכן, not beforehand. אחרי שכבר על פי השם ניסו ועל פי השם יחנו, הרי עונש שנית כל ימי אשר ישכון הענן יחנו, לכן בסופו של דבר פסוק העובדה שלא ייסע אפילו לשמן שם מהמזרחית, I dare not travel if the cloud is down. It's a lesson for life. I could try to connect it to the piece before, but to be honest, whatever I was going to give Shiur on, I was going to bring this anyway. It's a very, very important lesson for all of us, and I passed my time, so we'll finish over. Okay.